to Coyte's earlier presentation, which was great, and we're going to go ahead and continue. If you were not, this is Dr. Coyte Cooper, wrestler, mountain climber, book writer. Flip the Script, which will be out soon, and also All In is a curriculum he's developing that should be coming out pretty soon. So keep your eye out for that. Get involved on the social media, and you'll have information from there. But lots of valuable information. So please, without further ado, Dr. Coyte Cooper.
Yeah. Cool. Well, the good news, well, I don't know if this is good news, but this morning it was dark up here. And now we got a strobe light. Actually, it just went dark, but we have a strobe light, so if it goes really bad, we can just turn this into a dance party or something like that. Some of you are terrified out there because there's no way you're dancing on the stage, but maybe I'll dance just in case it gets boring, which it won't, by the way. We're not going to allow that to happen. But I wanted to kick this thing off by just telling you that I always love speaking, but I love speaking more when I get a chance to talk about people that have just changed my life. And this person on the screen is somebody, how many people were here for the panel the first day? Okay, so a big chunk. And some of you heard me talk about one of my coaches who, his name was Ron. And the most interesting thing is we never called him coach. He never had us call him coach. And I always loved that. It was always Ron. Like, he didn't need us to tell him he was the coach. We just all knew. We respected him more than anything. And Ron used to do some pretty unique things. I'm going to tell you a couple stories about him after this, but Ron used to do this, right? Every day we would walk into practice. It never failed. He would walk in. He always had a smile on his face, and he'd say, "How are you doing, buddy?" And I'd say, "I'm good." And he'd always say this, though. He'd always ask, "Well, how's your family doing?" So, "Parents are good? Did you thank them for bringing you here today?" "I didn't." "Well, you need to go do that because you're very blessed to have parents who bring you here." And then he'd say, "Hey, Coyte, how's school going?" "And school's going pretty good." "Well, how are your grades?" "Good." Because he wasn't our high school coach, he was our club coach. But he'd always ask these questions, and I never thought anything about it until later. When I started to realize, I pieced together that he was always setting priorities first. Only after he asked the questions about family, and he asked questions about grades, but even before that, how you were doing, only before he did that did he start to talk to you about training and getting ready. And it was always intentional. And it was really cool. He did all kinds of crazy things training. He used to like to get the point across of keeping our elbows in. He used to make us like tie our arms in with ropes, and we had to wrestle like that. I was like, this guy's insane. We would do all kinds of weird things on these sliding boards, and it was nuts. He was so innovative. But just a couple stories. For those of you who weren't here the first day, I won't tell the whole story. I only gave you a concise version the first day. But when I was 14 years old, he convinced me into going across the country to a tournament. It was the best 15 and 16-year-olds in the country. It was the first year where they were going to allow 14-year-olds. And I had to get a doctor's note. And I remember thinking, is this a good idea? Like, should I be going if I have to get a doctor's note? And I get the physical. I go across the country to Chicago, Illinois. I was really competitive, so I knew the top kids in the country. I knew Stephen Bradley from Indiana was number 1. I knew that David Stoltz from Illinois was number 2. I knew all of them. So anyways, you all will know this if you're here the first day, but early in the tournament, I walk up to the bracket, and I go, "Oh, I've got Stephen Bradley. I've got the number 1 kid in the country." And in wrestling, it's interesting because you have a winner's bracket and you have a loser's bracket. You don't want to go to the loser's bracket. It doesn't even sound fun. It's a loser's bracket, right? And so anyways, I'm going up there, and I'm thinking, gosh, I don't want to go to the loser's bracket. This is defensive thinking, by the way. And I go walking away, and I'm like, I got Stephen Bradley, man. And I had seen Stephen Bradley. He was bald. He was jacked. I mean, he was scary. He was a grown man. And I was a 14-year-old boy. And I walk away, and I walk up to my coach, and he says, Ron says, "Coyte, how you doing?" He used to wear these, like, Harley leather jackets. Little dude. Harley leather jackets. Comes walking up. "How you doing, buddy?" Same thing. I'm like, yeah, not so good. And I didn't say that, but he knew that. And he said, "Well, what's up?" And I said, "I got Stephen Bradley. He's the number 1 kid in the country." Those of you who are here, you know what I'm going to say. He looks at me. He doesn't flinch. He smiles, and he says, "No, Stephen Bradley has you." And I'm like, that just doesn't seem quite right. Has he seen Stephen Bradley? Like, the guy, he just hasn't seen him. And I go walking away, and at first I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's true. But then because I trusted and I loved this guy, I started to go, could he be right? Could it be true that Stephen Bradley has to deal with me? And not within 10 minutes, I'm walking around and I'm like, Stephen Bradley has to deal with me. Stephen Bradley has to deal with me. He walks out there in his leather Harley jacket. He's standing on the side. I go walking up to him. I slap his hand. He smiles at me. He reminds me, Stephen Bradley has you. And I walk out on the mat like I own the thing, and I beat Stephen Bradley 10-4 in the match. And I go through and I win the tournament, youngest ever 14-year-old to win the tournament. And I told the first group, I don't tell you that to impress you, because I don't even place at that tournament, I don't think, if not for a coach that believed in me. If not for a coach that looked at me and said, hey, Coyte, he didn't say this, but what he said, he's saying, you think you're here, but you belong up here. I didn't realize that I belonged up here, but he believed in me so much that he taught me an incredibly just valuable lesson that day. Okay, I want to fast forward a year and tell you a second part to the story, because there's a second part to the story, and if you thought I was bragging to you for any reason in the first story, you will realize that I was not when I tell you this story. Because I came back the next year, and I was the #1 kid in the country. And I had gone to the World Championship the year before. I'd had some of the best coaches in the country. I'd went over to Hungary, Budapest. I was better. I thought I was better. And I'm coming back, and this is my year. I'm going to make the world team. I'm going to go on, and I'm going to place at the World Championships this year. That's the way I'm seeing it. I train hard. I prepare hard. And I'm warming up for the tournament. And I still remember my same coach, Ron, comes walking up to me. And he says, Coyte, and he had this little raspy voice. He's like, Coyte, you got this, and I can't do it, so I'm not going to do it. But anyways, he said, you've got this 14-year-old from Pennsylvania. And he said, he's tough. And the crazy thing is, I didn't hear the part where he said he was from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of the toughest wrestling states in the country. I didn't hear the part where he said he was tough. I heard the part where he said he was 14, and I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I maybe got a little bit overconfident. The irony of that? I was the 14-year-old the year before. So anyways, I go walking onto the mat, and I wasn't crazy cocky. I felt like I was ready. I didn't listen to him quite enough. And I go walking out on the match, and I can't tell you a lot about the match. All I can tell you is I remember looking up at the score at the end of it, and all of a sudden they throw the towel out, and just like that, boom. My goal of being a world team member and going into the World Championships is gone just like that. And I go walking off the mat, I go walking by my coach, I go into the back of Northwestern Arena, and I get to a spot where nobody can see me. It's behind this big old curtain, and I sit against the wall, and I just start crying. And I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, gosh, I let my parents down. They flew me all across the country to bring me here. I let my teammates down. I let my coach down. By the way, none of that was actually the case. Those were just my thoughts. And I'm sitting there, and I'm starting to wonder, like, why even do this? I made the world team last year. I'm the #1 kid in the country. Why don't I just pack it up and go home? Because I can't get what I wanted. And it's weird how you get in these moments of adversity and you have these thoughts that come through your mind where you're contemplating whether you should go or you should quit or what you should do. And I didn't really know what to do. But I'm sitting against the wall, and that same coach comes up to me. And he sits next to me just like this. And he doesn't say anything. And I remember thinking to him, are you going to say anything? This is crazy awkward. And all of a sudden, he reaches over, he puts his hand on my knee, and he says, Coyte, you need to get back up, and you need to wrestle back. It will matter to you someday. And he gets up and he walks away, and I'm like, that's it? That's your motivational speech? And the weirdest thing, he had a way of, just remember he told me, the only thing he said to me the time before was what? He said, Stephen Bradley has you. And he walked away. This time he said, you need to get up and you need to fight. It will matter to you someday. And he goes walking away, and same process. I'm going, I don't know. But then all of a sudden, because he was the type of coach, again, that I trusted him, I started to say, I got to get up. I got to get up. I got to fight. And I got to tell you, my heart was not in it. I couldn't get what I wanted. I was hurt. But I decided that I would fight. And I got back up, and I warmed up the best I could, and I went out on the mat, and I won the match, and I came in the back, and I cried again. I can't tell you how many times I repeated that, but I continued to get up, and I continued to fight. 7 matches later, I came back and placed 3rd in the tournament, did not make a world team, walked out of there hurt, dejected. But the most interesting thing is, as I look back on my wrestling career, of all the things I'm most proud of, that's the moment. That's the moment I'm most proud of. I had a chance to win national championships, be an All-American in college, and people said, what's your proudest moment? That moment, because I didn't quit, because I didn't give up. And that coach taught me an incredibly valuable life lesson that I never forget because I don't quit at anything now. Nothing. You give me rejection on something, that's fine. I'm going to keep coming. And I learned that from him. And the reason why I'm telling you these stories is your coaches. And you've heard this in different sessions today, and sometimes maybe it blows past you, but you have the ability to make incredible impressions on your athletes, ones that they will never forget. And I'm going to tell you more about Ron and his situation right now and his health condition. But, man, I post stuff about him sometimes. You know, I did a podcast interview with him, and I posted it, and all the former athletes, they come out of the woodworks to post about how he did the same thing for them. It's really remarkable. And so what I want to do today is just go through and just talk to you more about ways that you can do that. And a lot of these, honestly, are some of these things about Ron. But what I want to do first is I want you to help me, because really what we want to be able to do is elevate athletes' lives, right? To be able to take them and show them that you belong at a different level, that you're capable of more, that you can achieve more. Us as a team, we can elevate and do more. But how do you do that, right? That's the question. How did Ron do what he was able to do? And I think I have some ideas, and I know you have some ideas, and hopefully you'll share those things. But the first thing I want to start with is I'd like to make this a little bit interactive, if possible. And I want you to help me. And I want to start with this. And we don't have to raise our hands, but I'm going to ask you to just kind of just turn to a group of 4 or 5 around you, and I want you to just brainstorm and come up, what do you think are the biggest barriers that are stopping athletes from achieving their goals or at a high level today? And we're going to use that to frame our entire session. But can you help me on that? Yes? Yes? All right, let's do it. Okay, let's break off, and then I'll get to you in just a second. That's good. We're good. Yeah. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and do this. Obviously, we probably won't get to every group, but I wanted to be able to throw some things out there. And so why don't you just, hopefully, let's just get a few people. What types of ideas did we have out there? Okay, we have entitlement. And I've heard that a lot with a lot of the different groups, but people feeling like they're entitled. And so I'll just leave that one alone. We've talked about that one quite a bit. Yeah. What else we got? Yeah. Fear. Yeah, fear. And I actually didn't ask this. Normally in my first talk, this is one of the things I'll ask people is I'll say, what's the biggest thing holding us up, anybody up? And I tell you, I talk to a wide range of audience. I talk to high school kids. I talk to coaches. I talk to business people. Last week, I talked to a grief group of people that are in their 70s and 80s. And bar none, the number one answer is always fear. Do you know what number two is? A closely related cousin, self-doubt. Fear and self-doubt are two of the biggest things that you see, and that's all generations. You have anything else? Parent expectations? Yeah, I mean, I think in a form of who their main leaders are, you know, and what you're teaching them, and yeah. So I'll shut up. I'll keep talking about this. And any other things we had? Yeah. Social media.
What I said earlier is I was talking to my coach here. I would say players want to play, but they don't put in the work.
Yeah.
If they don't want to play, they have to put in the work to play for the way they perform.
Yeah, and I think we can combine an answer we had here and your answer. Instant gratification. Wanting things quickly, wanting things easily. And so social media and the internet has trained us to think that way. And I told the people in the front, listen, there's some really amazing things about that. Like I can get on Amazon, I can get anything I want like next day. And now it's getting to the point where they'll come to your house like an hour or two. When you're shopping, you're pumped about that. I'm fantastic, man. You over-deliver, you bring it to me in 2 hours. I'm stoked about that. You know what's interesting, though? When we get in the habit of getting things quickly, boom, quick, we think there's nothing to that, but it's not only younger generations that are being hurt by this. I find myself when I'm not careful, you know, I want my books to be on the New York Times bestseller lists. I want to be able to talk to millions of people, and I want it now. Like I want it tomorrow sometimes, and I have to remind myself, no, hold up. Earn that. You're not ready for that. Earn that. Step up and hone your craft. Get better at what you do. And so we have to be able to learn those things. And so let's go ahead and move on this, and I think we'll see some of these things. But this session, it's cool because the Life of an Athlete is sponsoring this thing, and one of the things that they wanted to do is to get into some of these tough issues. And so some of the things we didn't talk about, which I think absolutely fill, is also alcohol and drugs, right? Alcohol and drugs are a problem in our society. Drugs, pills have become a big issue, and more kids are turning to it. And I think the thing that we have to understand about that, I'm not going to turn this into a psychology class, but human beings, we do things for pain and pleasure. Okay, pain and pleasure drives us. We do things to avoid pain, and we do things to bring more pleasure. And a lot of times we've been marketed to from the time we're young, you know, to believe that certain things are going to give us pleasure. And drinking alcohol, cigarettes, all these things from a young age, that happens. And we don't need to get into that a lot, but I think it's important. What we're going to do in the next phase is if you want to get kids away from these types of behaviors, and you want to get them away from technology, which is probably a bigger issue than 1 and 2 right now, if you want to get them away from that, you have to give them a better option. You have to give them something that's actually going to drive them in a different direction. And then the final thing I think is also self-care, just bad decisions, bad behaviors. And what we want to do is just, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, right? I don't think this serves us. We need to know what the issues are, but at the end of the day, we want to provide better options. And so how do we change these patterns? And I just told you a second ago, we give their brain a better options. And what I want to do is I just want to provide you with just 5 tangible things that you can do to improve your leadership ability and your ability to elevate others. And so like my first presentation, I learned this as a college professor. You take and you put these things out. I'm going to give you 1 through 5, and then we're going to move through those things. We might even have an activity in the middle of it. But the number one thing that's more important than everything else, if you want to pull your athlete's potential out, the first thing you have to do is pull your own potential out. And you might be saying, well, Coyte, that doesn't sound that profound, but it actually is. My coach in high school, the one that was always doing crazy things, was always studying. He was always studying. He was studying, before people did it, biomechanics. There wasn't even a name for it, but he was studying that stuff. He was studying how the body responded to training. I mean, no joke. This is 30 years ago. And we would do cycling in our training. He would bring us in. Our practices would get shorter. We would do all kinds of shorter intervals in our practices. We had all kinds of these different sprint workouts that we do. It was all planned. The only time I ever peaked in my life was when I wrestled for that coach. But he was always doing this. He was always studying. He was always getting better. And so I'm going to give you some more tips on that. But the number 2 thing is going to be this: become a leader worth following. I've talked to some coaches here, and they keep coming, and they're talking about culture building. And listen, we can talk about all these strategies of things that you can do, but at the center of all of it has to be you. When it comes to building an extraordinary program, when it comes from a performance standpoint, culture standpoint, which is the same thing, it always starts with a leader that steps up and casts vision. It steps up with a leader who has energy and passion, who shows up every single day and is worth following. A lot of times we look around, and I'm not careful, I do this as well. I work with people, and I want them to show up and solve the problem. But you know what? I haven't done enough to give them a reason to move in a certain direction. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I need to hurry this up so we get to them. But number 3, create a contagious championship culture. This is going to be a piece where we're going to talk more about values, and just more specifically about steps that you can take to really maximize it. And then we're going to move into number 4, give the daily gift of the 3 Gs. 3 things that if you teach your athletes to do these things, they're going to be more effective. And the cool thing is this: you don't even have to be a coach if you're in here to benefit from this. And you don't have to want to take this back. This can just be for you, but there's 3 things that you can do in the G category to really pull out potential in your athletes. And then the final thing I'm going to talk to you about is just, I think it's the biggest thing. It's learning to believe in your athletes. I'm going to tell you a really unique instance of a high-level coach, of something crazy unique he does that it blows me away. This guy's like an Olympic champion, 4-time NCAA champion, and he does something really cool to develop his ability to believe in his athletes. So I'm going to bring that to you. And so really what we're talking about is this, okay? When athletes are moving in a direction that we don't like them to, or people in general, because I work with people all the time, one of the things that we have to do is we have to help them create patterns and fill their brain with focus. Because when we're bored, we tend to make bad decisions. When we're distracted, we make bad decisions. When we don't have the emotions we don't want, we make bad decisions. So if we actually get ourselves in a better shot, we maximize our ability to do better with them. And so the first thing I wanted to do real quick is this: pull out your potential. And the first thing I talked about this morning was one of the most important things you can do as a leader is to invest in yourself, to increase your capacity. And we talked this morning about a morning growth routine. They're crazy powerful if you get up in the morning and you move through. Anybody remember any of the activities that we talked about? Okay, we had reading, right? You get up and you read. Take the dog out. Take the dog out. Yeah, take the dog out. I'm going to do that when I get home. Yeah. Meditate. Yeah, who said that? And we actually, that's cool. You said it at the same time? Good. So you guys both get credit for that. I actually didn't talk about meditation, and I probably should have, because I've come to the conclusion that meditation might be one of the single biggest things to maximize performance that you can do. And I remember in high school, I used to think meditation was for weird people. As an athlete, I was like, oh, that's just weird people. They just do that stuff. I'm not doing that stuff. And I've started to do that now, and it's incredible. And I just want to tell you one thing about that. Because if you invest in something like meditation, there's something that's called HRV breathing. Has anybody ever heard of HRV breathing? It's a mechanism that our body has. And there's a nerve, there's like a vein in our body, that its sole job is to help us balance our emotions, right? And when we meditate or we do HRV breathing, we breathe in our nose, we go for about 4 seconds, we pause, and we breathe out for 6. Our body has an ability to actually take and center our emotions. It's unbelievable. If you don't believe this, just try this. Sometime you're revved up with your wife or your husband and you're about to do something stupid, pause and just breathe for a minute or two and watch. I swear your heartbeat will start to normalize. I did this recently, right? I like to watch basketball in my spare time. I've always kind of liked watching LeBron James play, and for some reason I it's one of the few things that gets my heart going. I get kind of amped up. I sometimes say things to the TV that I shouldn't. My wife tells me I look like an idiot, and I need to stop doing that. So I did this recently, right? I'm watching him play. I don't know why my heart starts to go boop, boop, boop. I start to get into it, and I go, okay, I'm just going to try this out. And I just started to do HRV breathing, and it was unbelievable. I felt my heart just kind of stop. It just stopped doing that. This is why people can actually go, and I don't recommend this, but they go without clothes into like Arctic type conditions, and it doesn't even impact them. They've learned to breathe. So we're not going to get too weird with you, but the point is, meditation. This is something, if you'll get up in the morning and you'll start meditating, it'll help you be more calm. And here's the coolest thing too. It will help you from a performance standpoint, even as a coach. Why? Because a lot of times when we're making poor decisions, it's when we get too revved up. We get pissed at the refs. We get mad at our athletes. At home, we get mad at our husbands or wives, and we say the wrong things, and it gets us into a lot of trouble. And if you'll practice this, what it does is it teaches you to avoid that. It teaches you to be calm. It creates space. It's a better response. So, but really what we want to talk about is just reading, goals, values, things like that. Here's a book that I highly recommend. If you want to increase your culture, this is an amazing book. Has anybody ever heard of the All Blacks? Yeah, there's a show on Netflix right now about this team. It's one of the greatest teams of all time, a rugby team. And they've unprecedented success. And Brian Smith, the coach at Missouri, who's one of the top coaches in the country, sent me a text. He said, you need to read this book. And I picked it up. And essentially, it's all about their culture, how they reinforce it, how they've built this amazing, amazing program. And I don't want to ruin it, but if you want to build your culture, pick this book up and make this one of those things that you do. Start your morning the right way, but increase your capacity. That's number one. The number two thing before we do that, I'm just going to give you one more thing, resources. And I got goofed up because I threw this on right before the session. But if you want to, some people say, I don't like to read. Anybody in here fit that model? You don't like reading? Don't like books? How many people like audio? Maybe. I've found that younger generations like audio a lot more than reading. And I've tried to get younger high school students to read, and they're like, I'm not reading. What do you mean you're not reading? They're like, I'm not reading. And I'm coaching them. I can't get them to read an audio. And so here's an option for you. I have a podcast, and you can download this on iTunes, or you can get it off my website. But the reason I bring it up, I've got 4 interviews with coaches that I think you would love. Okay, the first one on the far left is Jim Miller, 10-time NCAA championship coach. He talked about when he went to Wartburg, the program was nothing. And he went in there and he cast vision. He basically said, I'm going to win national championships. People said, no, you're not. You're not going to win. Nobody's ever won national championships here. And he kept doing it. He created this amazing culture. And I highly recommend, if you want to do that, listening to that one. The second one is Anson Dorrance, 21-time national championship coach. And he talks about some amazing ways that he's built culture with his girls. And it's unbelievable. He not only, and first I'll tell you this. I'll just give you kind of one thing that you can do. He says that every year he has a set of values, right? And he goes through and he talks to the girls about it, how it's important to their culture. Of course, it helps when you've won 21 national titles to do this. But he says every year he goes to his girls and he says, okay, here's our core list. Is there anything that doesn't belong anymore? Is there anything that we should add? And he says every year one thing changes, only one. One value swaps out, one value swaps in. And the most amazing thing happens, he says. The buy-in is incredible. And he says a lot of times it's a better system than they had before, but he said the buy-in's incredible. They feel like they have a say because of one value. And then they go out and they start to just model it and to get the other athletes to buy in. And he talks about how he uses quotes to reinforce values. And this is one of the most downloaded one that I've ever had. If you listen to that, it'll be cool. It's all them. It's not me. And then the last one, and these are all episodes, by the way. This is Bev Ball. Bev Ball coached up to the age of 88. McMurray University, 88, 60-plus years of coaching. And I had a chance when I went down to McMurray University and chat with her. She was one of the coolest, kindest, most amazing human beings I've ever met. And she talked about the importance of love and how love is so important when you're running a program. And a lot of times, wrestling coaches that might say, no, that's not it. But I actually think at the center of what Ron did was love. It was caring. And so that's one of those things. A couple more. First off, episode 70 is with my coach Ron, the guy I've told you about. He talks about elevating expectations and the things we've talked about before. And the final one, there's other episodes just like this. This is Kyle Schneider. So this goes to the athlete side. If you have athletes who want to learn more about this is one of the most successful athletes on the planet. And he's one of the most humble, most kind, one of the most amazing people you've ever met. And he's one of the youngest ever world and Olympic champions in wrestling. He's amazing. And so there's a lot of different things like that. So if you like audio, highly recommend taking a look at those things. And on top of that, there's also messages to help you be more effective in branding and performance and things like that. So just some resources. But when we move to the next one, it's about becoming a leader worth following. And I know this sounds kind of like, yeah, that doesn't sound like a lot, but this is really, really important. And this is Jim Miller up on the stage. But I just want to give you 3 steps of things that you can do when you leave here if you want to be more effective. Number 1 is this. Sit down as a coach and determine what you're going to stand for. And I hope you've done that. I bet some of you have. I bet you've sat down and you've said, okay, here are the things that I'm going to stand for. Here are my values when I walk into the room every single day. I know Ron had those things. I know Jim Miller, this amazing coach up here, had these things. He wrote those things down. And if you really want to make an impact, I've done this with coaches. And I've said, okay, I want you to write these things down. And they go, okay, I'll do it. But they're skeptical. And I had a coach from Drexel I was working with, and he went and did this. And one of the things he said is, he says, I'm kind of a hothead. He's this little guy. He's amazing. But he said, I'm kind of a hothead. He said, I kind of get in and I get pissed at my athletes and I scream at them. And he says, I always regret it afterwards. He said, I always feel bad. And he says, they don't really listen. I don't actually get that much out of them. And I said, what do you want to be, Matt? He says, I want to be calm. I want to be supportive. And he created a list of these things. And so I said, Matt, here's what I want you to do. Every day I want you to get up. And just like I told you this morning, I want you to revisit these things, and I want you to remind yourself. Put those things into your brain, and then go into your day. And I said, I want you to emphasize calm this week. And then I want you to go in every day and emphasize calm. And so he went in. And sure enough, one of his best athletes did something real stupid. He got real pissed. He called me up. And I said, you just got to keep showing up. We got to keep doing this. And so he kept emphasizing calm. By the end of the year, though, he said he had the best year he's ever had before. He had the best recruiting class he's ever had before because of being more intentional. This made me real happy, the next part. His wife was really pleased. His wife was very happy because he came home and she's like, what's wrong with you? Like, something's different. Like, you're not yelling, you're not doing crazy things. And I became one of his wife's best fans. I was very happy about that. But the point is, as a coach, when you're intentional, it's so important. I know you're busy. I know you have athletes doing crazy things. I know you have all those things. But when you have those things you want to be, you give yourself a shot. Right? When you say, okay, I'm going to be a motivating person. Listen, if you walk away and you don't do anything with that, are there going to be times when you don't? Absolutely, but you give yourself a shot. And Jim Miller, I told you that first day, amazing at this. And then the final thing, I think what you do is once you take those values, here's what I've learned. At first, when you start modeling your values, it's going to be hard. You're establishing a new habit. When I've done patient, I told you the first day, I'm not patient. I've had to work at this. But the coolest thing happens after a while. I start to become more patient. And then it's like in practice, right? You have your athletes come in, you have them work on a skill. The first thing that they have to do is get a baseline level of the skill. It doesn't mean they're going to roll in and be amazing in competition, but they get a base level. Once they have a base level and it starts to go into their brain, it's a habit, that's where the most creative part of sport takes place. Same with this. Eventually, you'll be able to do this at a high level, and when that happens, you'll be able to elevate energy and expectations. And what I really want to encourage coaches to do is instead of kind of settling in that middle spot, pick those values and model them so well that they add up to your overall brand. And when you do that, like my coach Ron did, all of a sudden there's an overarching thing that happens. Your athletes start to think, well, it's amazing. This person's amazing. Extraordinary, uncommon, those different words. Think about what you want to accomplish with that and really attack that. Okay, that's number 2. And so one thing I was going to do, but I want to make sure we're running a little bit late, but I highly encourage you to do this when you go home, is going to be this activity. It's called the Impact Maker activity. Because if I were to ask you to leave here and go create a set of values, some of you would be like, there's just too many to choose from, right? When I first did that, I was completely overwhelmed. Some people are like, well, I can't find any. It's weird how we get on these ends. There's too many for some, there's too little for others. But the one thing that I think has really helped people, if you'll go home and you'll do this, it will really, really make this process better. Go home and do this. Write down 3 people who have impacted your life. People you remember and you just get kind of positive emotions about, right? My coach Ron was one of them. I'll tell you about a couple over in a second. But here, if all we did is that, it wouldn't get us anywhere, okay? The second thing you want to do is this. Why? Why do you remember them? Why is it that you remember some and you don't remember others? And by the way, make this positive, because I promise you that if you went home and you said, write down somebody you remember, some of you could write down people that you really disliked, that make your blood boil, that you go, those people were selfish. I can't say the words of what you'd say. They just get you real pissed. In fact, I'm not going to tell you to do that. I tell you, think about that right now. I don't want to get you pissed in the middle of my presentation. That wouldn't be productive, right? But if you do that, don't do that, right? But I will say this, if you did do that, if you tell me the things you hate about a person, I can also tell you your values. If you tell me that you hated this person because they're one of the most selfish people you've ever met, there's a good chance that selfless or caring is one of your values. What makes your blood boil on the opposite side is your values, but we're going to keep this productive. You tell me the most impactful people in your life, I can tell you your values. Because those people that you remember, that you love, those are some of your values. I'm going to tell you one quick story. Just the impact of something like this. This person on the far left side over here is my wife, Brandy. Brandy is amazing, but Brandy's a stay-at-home mom. And for a lot of people, that's not quite enough. I'll say this, that's one of the hardest jobs. I could not do that job. I'd get swallowed up by my kids. They would just eat me alive and spit me out the door. I'd break. But every day she pours into them. And every day she does these unique little things in the same way that some coaches do. Right? And one day she came up to me and she says, Coyte, she says, I don't think I'm doing enough. She said, I just don't feel like I'm impacting them. I said, sweetheart, of course you are. And I wasn't just being a supportive husband. I walked over to the table and I picked up a stack of sticky notes. And I walked over and I threw them down in front of me. Now, they weren't just sticky notes. That would be weird. They were sticky notes. And on every single one of those sticky notes were messages that she had written to my son, Carter, in his lunch every single day. How amazing he is, how he can achieve his goals, all positive reinforcement. That alone seems kind of cool, and it always plays real well with some of the female audience. They're like, oh, the guys are kind of like, yeah. Hope not. Hopefully you guys are like, that's really cool, because I thought it was really cool. You know why? You know how I know it worked? About 3/4 of the way through the year, my son started to write notes back. On the notes, he would write, I love you too, you're amazing too. And I thought, yes, that's amazing, right? Impact maker, difference maker. Will he remember that someday? Yes, he will. He'll remember that someday. I'm not telling you that you have to write notes to your kids. What I'm saying is when your athletes come in the door, think of those things that they're going to remember about you. Be intentional about taking little steps. Honestly, one of the things that really makes a difference is every day if you're just a person who encourages. I'm not saying you don't have to give people tough love, but if every day when you walk in you do something to encourage your athletes, they will remember that. Why? Because most people are discouraging every single day. But find your way to make moments like this, okay? But continuing with this, find those people that you really admire, that impacted you, write down what made them unique, and then come back and say, are there trends among these people? Are there certain things like caring, innovative, hardworking? And when you find those things, those for you are universal values. They're things that you find in all the people that you remember. Pull those things back, see those every single morning, pursue those things, get great at that. And this is what I love about branding and values. When you're consistent and you pick the right values, all of a sudden what happens is you have tons of people who now want to be around you because you've chosen the right values. Very few people will dislike you being kind to them. Very few. If they are really grumpy, take off, right? But very few people. Most people really value that. And if you model that at a crazy high level, if you become a lifter, an elevator, somebody who can step into people's lives and tell them, you know what, you think you're here, you belong up here, people will always remember you. They always will. But you must sit down and decide you're going to be that and remind yourself every single day and have discipline. Otherwise, it won't happen. One of my top values is to make moments, whether I'm with audiences, when I'm at with my family, no matter what I do. And I have to hold myself accountable because I get lazy when I don't. If I did not see the value make moments every single day, I would miss opportunities every single day. Last summer, my son, who loves climbing mountains, came to me and said, Dad, I want to go to Mount Baker today. It's a Saturday. We don't have any plans. I have no reason not to go to Mount Baker, but I said, no. Mount Baker's it's not even open. I just made it up. Like, what? I didn't make it up. I made that up. Right. But anyways, he says, I'm just trying to have some fun here, man. You guys are mean mugging me. Just loosen up a little bit. Man, I know it's later in the afternoon, but just, we're close. We're close. You're going to have beers after this. It'll be good. It'll be good. But anyways, he comes to me, and he says, I want to go to Mount Baker. And I say, no, we're not going to Mount Baker. Go to my wife. And he's like, he wants to go to Mount Baker. She's like, nah, let's not go. We don't need to go to Mount Baker. Mount Baker is an 11,000-foot mountain. And up there is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I'm like, no, we're not going. And then I go walking, and I sit, and I say, Coyte, and I talk to myself sometimes. I say, Coyte, you talk to audiences all the time about being authentic, about modeling your values. And I stopped, and I said, make a moment today. I walked to my son, and I said, we're going to Mount Baker. He's like, what? I'm like, going to Mount Baker. Let's go to Mount Baker. We jump in the car. I even say, I'm going to have a great attitude about it. We go up there, and we hike around, and it's extraordinary. It's amazing. Like, the views are awesome. I love it. And as we're going home, I realize we just made a moment. As a family, we just made a moment. And here's the thing. Individual single moments add up, and they compound. And that's what turns into extraordinary. Make moments with your athletes. Bring them in. Teach them the right lessons. Move them on the right track. They don't have great options, right? They've chosen social media. That's making them expect instant. It's pulling them off track. They're choosing drugs. They're choosing alcohol. Give them something to be a part of that they believe in. Get them to believe in you. When they believe into you, you can change behavior. A lot of times people say, oh, well, kids these days, you can't change them. Of course you can. I used to work at the University of North Carolina, one of the best institutions in the United States, and some of the students didn't, my professors would say, oh, they don't want to learn, and oh, this and that, and I'm like, BS. Give them a reason to learn. Get in and connect with them. Challenge them. Do different things. And what do you know? They do want to learn, but you have to connect and you have to challenge them in unique ways. But this is at the core of it. Decide who you want to be, have the discipline, and I promise you a year from now, you will not regret this investment. You see your values every single day. You get to the point where you love those things and you model them like crazy, you're going to see results from that. And so the next thing I want to talk about real quick is creating a contagious championship culture. And here's one of the biggest things I can tell you. You want to build a great program, and from a branding and culture standpoint, where your kids want to be a part of it, your athletes want to be a part of it. I always say this. I just told you this, everybody wants to be a part of something special. Everybody. Even kids that are joining gangs want to be a part of something special. Their bases are just a little bit off. They just don't know that the thing that they're joining is not going to help them. They just want love. They want caring. They're joining it because they think it's going to bring them pleasure. When you create a really amazing culture where they're allowed to kind of elevate and get better and better and you achieve success with them, that's a contagious championship culture. And there's a couple pieces to that are really important. And the number one thing that you have to do as a coach is you have to cast vision. And I've seen this with programs. There are some coaches that will take and they will first establish their own values, and then they'll come back to the table and they will work to establish some core values, but it can't be going through the motions. The coaches that I know that have built winning programs that go out where there's all of a sudden tons of people at their events. I think of one, his guy name's Chris Bono. He used to coach at South Dakota State University. When he first went there, like literally less than 50 people in the stands. Like crickets. It was like awkward for people when they went and watched. Have anybody been to a sporting event like that? Where it's so quiet that everybody feels weird? They're not sure if they want to talk? That's the way that it was at South Dakota State. Within 3 years, his average attendance was 2,000. 2,000. And you go, oh, just, kind of lucky. No. South Dakota State is a Division I wrestling program, bottom of the barrel, lowest funding. You know who was at the center of it? A coach who said, we are going to build an amazing program. We're going to win here. We're going to be a championship program. He got a mantra. He said, get jacked. And it sounds weird, but he totally made it work. He's walking around telling people to get jacked. I go home one day and I get a t-shirt in the mail that says, get jacked. I'm like, okay, let's get jacked. I guess so. And but the craziest thing, it sounds nuts, he had his values. He communicated with his athletes. He sold it to them. He said, hey, guys, you know where we're going? We're going somewhere. We're going to be a top 10 program. Come with me. Let's go. Talk to parents. Come with me. Let's go. Sold it. People believed him. That's the thing we haven't maybe talked about in the center of all of this building a great program. It always starts with energy. And at the center of energy is a person who will take and cast vision. Apple, vision. Steve Jobs, crazy as heck. Nut job. But Steve Jobs had an idea that he was going to create a device that would change the world. People looked at him and said, you can't do that. He said, yeah, I can and I'm gonna. And he had a lot of rejection, but he ended up making that happen. Walt Disney, who was crazy as well, said he wanted to create the happiest place on earth. He had this idea for this happy place. He went and tried to get funding for it, got rejected over 200 times. He said, you can't do that. You can't build the happiest place on earth. That just sounds stupid. And guess what? He cast vision, he moved, he went and he did it. And now, not only do you have to pay for it, you have to pay months in advance or you can't get what you want. My kids keep bugging me to go, and I'm like, no, we're not going there, but we will end up going there. Because a crazy guy had a vision. Don't be the crazy guy or gal, though. Be the person who has a vision that is good for everybody and get out and cast vision. And the way to follow this up is also, it's not only saying here's where we're going, but create a path. Values are the path. And you've heard a lot of people talking about identity, and you need an identity. You need something where you're coming in every day and you're talking about what your identity is. We're hardworking. We have fun. We're going to grow. I can't tell you what that is, but you have to have that, and you have to have it. It's your process. You have to believe in that. Because if you don't believe in it, you will not show up and sell it to the people around you. But when you do this, all of a sudden, you get something special. But you got to show up every day. And every morning when you get up, here's one thing I haven't talked about before, but if you got up and you had the key areas of your program and you wrote down your vision statement and you went through it every day, and you said, here's the program we're building, and you got good at creating your own energy in the morning and you were excited about it, now you got a shot to go into the day and actually do that. If you had the discipline to see it every single day, and then walk in and start telling people, here's where we're going, here's how we're going to do it, people will think you're crazy, but when you keep doing it, inevitably what will end up happening is you'll get people on board and you'll go there, but you have to be willing to step up. Brian Smith has done this at Missouri. He has a mantra called Tiger Style. And he's branded it so well that his athletic department wants to steal it from him. But he took this thing and he talks about Tiger Style, and he used like John F. Kennedy's kind of statement here. We don't choose Tiger Style because it's easy. We choose it because it's hard. We choose it because we want to go out and do something that nobody else has done before. And every time he has recruits come in or athletes he's talking to, he tells them this. He tells the parents this. He tells the boosters this. He tells the administrators this. Tiger Style. This is who we are. And then he has these values. He has all these cool values. One of the things that he talks about, one of his top values is one more. He talks to his athletes about one more. He says every day when we're in practice, we hit one more. In the classroom, we try to do one more study session. At some point, you got to cut the one mores off because it's just not productive. You just do too many one mores, but the point is one more. He wants his athletes to be able to do that. He talks to them about, I'll tell you one more thing he does, which I think is really cool. He says he knows his athletes need a break, and he says every Wednesday, he trains hard. Every Wednesday, they think they're getting a day off. And he said he comes in and they talk about mindset, and they talk about their values and their culture. He says it's the most important day of their work week. He said a lot of coaches go, you can't do that. You know, we're getting an edge on you. He says, no. What they don't know is I'm getting an edge on them. Because mindset, the 90% of what makes success, he's working it every single week. And now the cool thing is he's a top 5 program, right? So he's built this in. He has this Tiger Style. He has this one more. Now he's got like national champs that he brings in to talk about it. He tells stories about them to reinforce his brand. Great brands use stories to reinforce it, but you have to be able to do this. This is their locker room. When you walk in, this is what you see. And so he's gotten to the point where it's not just culture. It shows up everywhere. They have Tiger Style tailgates. They have all kinds of things. It's on social media. They use it to brand. And then we're getting down to the end of this thing. I got to wrap this thing up. The gift of 3 Gs. If you can do these 3 things with your athletes, it'll make a huge difference. Number 1, emphasize growth. As you build your growth system and you see the benefits, you must do it first. You're going to be the one that set the tone. But if you go through and you find that meditation works, visualization works, goals work, whatever it is for you, you find that it works, go into your athletes and pass it on. And a lot of times coaches say, oh, my athletes won't write the goals down. They won't if you don't sell it to them. If you tell them that it will radically change their performance in their life and you sell it to them and they believe in you, they will do whatever you ask them to do. But you have to emphasize growth. The number 2 thing, gratitude. You know, if you're feeling like you want to do something completely different, encourage your athletes to get a gratitude journal and have them just write down 1, 2, 3 things that they're grateful for. Have them write down something that's a challenge in your sport and say, what could you be grateful for? Teach them to change that. You know, one thing that I've seen coaches do, which is amazing, have them write gratitude letters to their parents, to their grandparents. It's unbelievable. Kids love it. I did this with my college students, and they didn't want to do it at first, gave them extra credit, and they came back to me and said it's one of the coolest exercises they've ever done. So grateful. You know, it's one of those things. And the final thing, we've already talked about this, you already know about this, but get them goals. But here's one of the biggest tips that I'll give you. Don't push them to have your goals. Don't push them to have goals that they think they should have. Sit down and ask them what they're really passionate about. And even if it's outside of your sport, have them write down every single day and help them get that. Your program will be better for that. And one of the things I would encourage you to do is try to talk them into writing their goals down every single day. So profound. Because if you don't, social media is there, alcohol's there, drugs are there. When you can get something they're passionate about and get them to write it down and help them close the gap and build momentum, you've given them a better option. Growth, gratitude, and goals are a better option. And then the final thing as we wrap this thing up, I'll make this the last thing, is believe in your athletes. This is the most powerful thing that you can do. And my coach Ron that I told you about at the beginning of this thing, he believed in me. I know he did. And that's why I went from being a guy that was maybe outside the top 10 nationally to being one of the top guys in the country, because he believed in me. When I used to go out and wrestle matches, I felt like I had a second person. It was like we were tag teaming my opponents. He wasn't really out there, but I felt like we were. Ron now has Parkinson's, right? And his health is starting to go down really fast. And I went and visited him about 1.5 years ago. And I walked in, and he has this hunch now. His face looks different, but he's still the same person. You walk in, and he's smiling. He always was so happy to see you. And we sat down, and he started to ask me about my kids, and I told him about my kids, and he smiled so big. He was so happy to hear that my life was going well. And then 10 minutes would go by, and he'd ask me the same question, how are your kids doing? Because that's what Parkinson's doing to him. But in the middle of it, the most magnificent thing was every time he asked me the same question, he smiled so big, and he was so happy to hear the same answer. Still the same caring guy, right? And I interviewed him for my podcast, and I said, Ron, what is it that you wanted to do with your athletes? And he said, you know, I wanted to teach them values. I wanted them to always know that their family was the most important thing. I wanted them to know that education was more important than winning. And I thought, yeah, he did that. Every day when I walked in, he reinforced that. And you're probably thinking, oh, we didn't win. Yeah, we won. We had the best club on the West Coast. We had people winning national championships, making world teams. It was incredible. And then he went on and he said, I wanted to make people better. I wanted to make them kind. And then he got to a point where I will never forget it. He said, I wanted athletes who thought they were right here to realize that they belonged up here. And I got goosebumps in that moment, because I thought 15, 20 years ago, when I was sitting in that arena, he taught me a valuable lesson, that you can change your expectations just like that in a second. Here's the thing. Most people have no idea what they're capable of. None. Most people undersell themselves every single day of what they think they're capable of. They don't know what they're capable of. And if you can become the type of person that can step into their lives and connect with them and say, you know what, you think you belong here, but you belong up here, you will always be remembered. And a really cool thing will happen. You'll become a master at pulling just potential out of people, and you'll create a program that you'll absolutely love. It will be one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do. So I hope this is valuable to you. If I can ever help you out, please let me know. Go get your beer now. Go have fun. Cool, thanks. And I told the last group, here's just contact information. There's a couple of my books.
Established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play,